Good afternoon. Welcome to Wagstaff Recruitment and Careers Coaching and our next LinkedIn Live session. Last week, we had a few little gremlins of technical, so I'm just waiting for my colleague to hopefully message me and let me know everything's okay, but we'll crack on. Really delighted that I've got Martin Johnson joining me this afternoon, and I'm going to pass over to Martin for a full introduction shortly, but just to set the scene of what today is about and what we're going to be covering. Over the past, it seems like every 5 years, any time period, the landscape changes for trying to apply and secure a new job. So there's a lot to navigate, and there's been a lot of changes over the time. And I've invited Martin to come on and join me today because we've known each other for more decades than we will care to admit to. And our paths have crossed where we used to compete as recruiters, and we've had our own recruitment businesses, and Martin will explain to you a little bit about what he does now within talent acquisition. So our job today is to help job seekers and those people looking for a career move to understand what the processes are like within internal talent acquisition teams, how that process may vary between applying directly with an organisation and with those internal teams or with recruiters. Please use the chat to say hello or any comments or any questions. I'll keep an eye on that. We normally run for about 30, maximum 40 minutes. So we will kick off. Martin, thank you so much for joining me. I am hoping that you appreciate how I avoided how long we've known each other, because it is that we've known each other. Would you like to just introduce yourself and just give our audience an overview of your career within recruitment?
Yeah, certainly. And I'll be very honest, I think it's over 30 years actually. We've known each other for a good chunk of that period of time. Both started when we were very young, obviously.
We did, yeah.
yeah, something around that. So my name is Martin Johnson. I'm currently the talent acquisition manager for an organisation called Avanya Clinical. We are a global contract research organisation, or CRO, that supports sponsors and manufacturers in the medical device arena. So I have the pleasure of finding talent for our company globally. So Australia, Europe, UK, US is where I'm operating currently. My background is, as I say, 30. This is our 30th year in recruitment. And mine's an even split, 15 years working agency, either in specialist niche areas or with my own consulting business, and 15 years working in-house as a corporate or talent acquisition recruiter across many different industries and sectors, starting in engineering, then moving into life sciences and medical device. So that's me. Excited to make a contribution to the conversation today.
15 years in talent acquisition directly for companies. I didn't realise it was that long, but then when you say it's been 30 years. So I've got a list here of things that I think our audience would be interested in hearing about, and especially speaking to job seekers and what they're navigating. And I think there's some myths that we might be able to squash and give a little bit more information to. But if we kickstart on that process of applying directly to an organisation versus contacting a recruitment agency, because when you were uploading onto a recruitment agency, you could be going through a job board, or a lot of people might go through their website, or they might pick up the phone and get the email address and send their CV over. With a lot of businesses now, they have these talent applicant tracking systems, don't they? And there's lots of different ones around.
Yes.
And there's lots of conversations about algorithms and how people's applications are viewed and reviewed. Can you just give some context about what that applicant tracking system looks like and what the truth is behind it and how it does match?
I mean, there are many and varied applicant tracking systems out there, and There are applicant tracking systems that then lead into HRIS information systems. So there's a whole suite of different elements. Applying to a company direct and to a recruiter is a very similar process. You're going to see positions posted. You're going to want to apply for that specific position. So coming through an ATS, you're going to see a process of being able to attach a cover letter. You're going to be able to attach your resume or upload that. You're going to be able to apply directly. There is a lot of myths about artificial intelligence looking for algorithms and those things. You will have seen over recent years, I guess, an implementation of more knockout questions. Your availability, your notice period, your salary expectations, your education, rights to work in certain countries, etc. Those are important information to fill in, because that's information that the recruiters, the hiring managers are looking for as well. But ultimately, how our application is reviewed once we're through those questions and that qualification piece is ultimately by recruiters, talent acquisition professionals such as myself, such as yourself, who are really going to go through that resume and look for elements that are meeting the criteria we're wanting to interview and select candidates from.
So you said there's some myths. What are the myths?
Well, the myths are, there's algorithms, there's AI looking for, certain repetition of keywords, etc. Some of that may play out on some of the job boards. So, let's not forget, you can apply or you can post a resume online where people can find you. So you've got to look at your resume from that point of view. So there is elements where technology is coming in, but ultimately in recruitment, as a talent acquisition professional, we're going to be reviewing those CVs that come through and are obviously applying for certain positions. It's a people process still, majority of people process still.
Okay, so that's good to know. So the first myth buster is your CV will not get rejected. In most talent acquisition processes, because your keywords haven't been there and it gets chucked out and not reviewed by a person. The only reason it won't get reviewed by a person could be that the salary hasn't, you don't meet the salary grade. Could it be?
Could be that. Could be that. Any element of the knockout questions. Yeah, any element of those pre-qualification questions, which is typically where, the application still comes through, but obviously there is a caution that this criteria hasn't been met in terms of the qualification questions. Okay.
Brilliant. So that's the task orientated piece for me. That's like uploading your CV. It's in there. You're getting reviewed. If we move that into then even more the human interaction, if you're putting an application through to a recruitment agency, you might be phoning up and saying, have you had my CV? And chasing that or dropping an email. How does that work internally within talent acquisition teams?
Same thing. To be fair, with most applicant tracking systems, if not all I've ever used, you're going to get a notification your application has been received and will be reviewed within X period of time. So it's been received. There's typically contact number or email addresses to reach out to follow up on that piece if you haven't received a response or if you want to proactively chase through.
And how's that received? Is that received still in the same manner?
Yeah, very much so. I guess I always question if we can check if somebody's received the email saying we're going to be in touch, and if somebody's getting in touch beforehand, there's a little bit of like, okay, there's a process, to be followed here. But I don't see anything wrong in proactively, reaching out, asking a question. Ask the right question. Have you received my CV? When we can see there's been an automated response saying we've received your CV, is probably not the best question, to be asking. Asking that, I can see my CV's been been received. Very keen to discuss with you as soon as is possible the opportunity, and my candidacy. Can you please let me know when the next round of conversation will be happening? That's probably a better way to approach it than have you received my CV.
I like that. So going a little bit back to the process, what about cover letters? Are cover letters read?
Yes.
Okay.
They are.
How important are they?
I would say your cover letter is the way of helping you differentiate yourself or make yourself stand out over and above other applications. So a cover letter to me should contain elements that speak to the job and the candidate criteria that the company are looking to hire. So you can use your covering letter as your opportunity to promote yourself, your skills, your knowledge, and your experience over and above the resume. But I would encourage the resume isn't changed too much per application, because ultimately that's the document that's going to be sat on the hiring manager's desk that they're going to be referring to during the interview process. So if you're sending out various versions of your resume and you're not able to track which versions you sent to which application during the interview, you could find yourself tripped up and that somebody refers to something on your resume you've forgotten about, or you've changed during different processes, and that could make an awkward situation in your interview. So I would encourage the cover letter is actually made applicable to the job posting rather than tailoring the CV. Because that way you've got consistent documents in front of everybody when you're talking.
That's really interesting. So have you experienced that when you've interviewed somebody and they really, okay?
Yeah. Yes. Throughout my career, I've seen that. I've also had elements in my career where hiring managers have gone, the CV read this, but the person couldn't talk to that. So there's elements, I think, preference to me is to keep your CV consistent in your applications, but apply your covering letter to the position that is being posted.
Yeah, okay. And we've talked about this ourselves offline about, when you've got somebody who's a seasoned professional and they've done maybe different elements and they're looking for different types of roles, as long as they track what CV they've sent.
Yes.
And they are, and it is genuinely, they are capable of doing these things that they're putting on their CV. We all know the wonderful powers of AI these days of write me a CV to apply for this job. Well, that's great. You might get the interview, but then you've got to demonstrate it and give true evidence, haven't you, to be able to get to that point.
I guess we should look at the CV in two ways. There's one, applying for a position, and then there's two, being visible to recruiters, both corporate in-house talent acquisitions and external recruiters, being visible when they're searching. So, the CV needs to be looked at in those two methods, applying, but also giving visibility to the market that you're out there and available. And
as talent acquisition for your organisation, you do both. You're receiving the CVs and you're directly going out to the market to try and attract the right talent for your organisation.
Yes.
So what search methods do you use so what needs to be in people's, I think there's two things here. I think there's a CV and then there's LinkedIn, isn't there? Because
I mean, you can obviously, you can share your CV on LinkedIn, you can have it as an attachment. So I guess without getting into the tactical details, we're very proactive in our outreach to candidates. So we're always running searches. So on LinkedIn, we're running Boolean searches. And I've always searched on skill sets rather than job titles, because a job title from one company to another can mean something totally different. So we're searching on skills. So on that basis, I would encourage either your CV or your LinkedIn profile has the right skills listed on it. You have the endorsements for those skills on that basis, because that's going to make your profile stand out higher. And you can even go on and complete a number of skills assessments yourself to demonstrate those skills that you have as well. So I would say specifically on the LinkedIn profiles, make sure you have the right skills. Some of those you can put in yourself, some of them are generated by LinkedIn. You get endorsements from your network for those skills, and where possible, you take those skills assessments to prove you have that skill set as well. Those elements to me are probably more critical than having a nice reference from somebody written at the bottom of your profile.
Okay, so I was just going to ask you that exact point. So there's a difference between endorsements and testimonials. So the endorsements, can you ask people to endorse you?
You can ask people to endorse you. Yes.
So you just literally will send a message to somebody saying, go onto my profile, these are my skills, could you endorse me?
Or you can say, please endorse me specifically for this skill.
Right.
And it will show who's endorsed you for that skill set. So, for example, in manufacturing, your area of expertise, you might have somebody who's endorsed for lean manufacturing or Six Sigma or continuous improvement. So again, if they're looking for those kind of roles, the more endorsements they have in those areas, the stronger their profile is going to look. You have to, the open to work badge is fantastic, but I think you still have to differentiate yourself to everyone else who's got the open to work badge by having those skills and endorsements.
There's been this debate, I don't know if you've seen it on LinkedIn, about there's been a couple of VPs that have said about the open to work banner shows desperation and they wouldn't look at them. And I was going to say, my view wasn't that until I started seeing quite a few people do this, and I was a little bit hesitant. So I have been working with a couple of people and said, well, try it off and then you can still have it as open, or try it on, and you can't meet everybody. I think my view was, if somebody sees that as a desperation, upon reflection, it's like, would you then want to work with somebody with that viewpoint? What's your viewpoint on the open to work?
I mean, it's a very much a personal preference. I don't necessarily see it as a desperation piece. You know, I see it as a tool that LinkedIn's put in place to help people promote that they are looking for opportunities. That the market's changed. I mean, we've been in recruitment when it's been in times when we've had high candidate availability. We've been in the market when we've been candidate driven. At the moment, we're in a bit of a flux. We seem to be between the two. We seem to be some availability, some skill shortages. So I think whatever tools are available, people need to be able to use to, promote themselves. It's personal, personal views, isn't it, really? Some people will say it's desperation. Some people say it's a great tool. It's hard to know, those personal elements on either of them.
Yeah, and it's so visible, isn't it, now? The LinkedIn information, LinkedIn is so visible.
Yes, it is so visible. It is so visible. Sorry, I've got somebody at my door doing their delivery. That always happens when you go live, isn't it?
That's fine. Normally the dog comes in, so don't worry. There'll be something that'll go through. So testimonials, that was one of my other on my list. What's your view on testimonials? Do you look at them when you're looking through? Any weight to them?
I mean, nobody's gonna ask for a testimonial of somebody who's going to give them a poor one. Let's be honest with you. So I've given testimonials, I've received them. I do go and look at them. I think they're nice points of reference to have. But let's be honest, nobody's ever going to ask somebody who's going to give them an average or poor testimonial. It's only ever going to be good ones, isn't it?
Yeah, very good point. And you have to approve them as well. So
Yes.
You're going to put ones that you want on your profile.
Yeah.
What about,
I would say it's probably good to be giving as many as receiving as many, because again, that shows activity through your network.
Yeah. Good point. Yeah, good point. What about people that are really interested in your organisation? You don't have a vacancy for them to apply. How would they approach you, and what have been the best ways to approach and the best ways to build relationships with internal talent acquisition teams?
Yeah, so most applicant tracking systems, if you don't see a position posted, you can actually click I'm interested in joining this company. You can list what kind of roles you're looking for. You're then proactively reached out to. So there's a way of joining a community via the applicant tracking system. So, just because there's something there, you can still have that piece. So you can then be proactively connected to the company through that piece. Certainly following organizations on LinkedIn, good thing to do. You get notified of, postings. I would say read any publications, attend any seminars where you can, follow as many different elements in that company as is possible. And when you're reaching out, make note that you've done these things, but draw reference to it. So don't just say, I watched a recent video, or congratulations on your new award. I've seen you've won something for, X, Y, and Z. This is the kind of company I'm keen to work for. These are the skills and the experiences I bring, that kind of thing. So it's adding something extra to it than just saying, I follow your company and I want to work for you. It's giving some extra spin on that basis.
It's building that. It's building your own story of how you're going to get to that place, so that the opportunity arises.
Yeah.
Not only front of mind, but you've become a little bit memorable in the right way.
Yeah. So follow, like, and share content. Share content with your own comments as well. Great to see X, Y, and Z company doing really well. Look like a great employer. There's so many things you can do, and they're not a great deal of effort, but they're things, again, if you're doing it consistently and repetitively, you're going to be visible.
Comparing LinkedIn profiles and CVs, just going back to that point, I wanted to ask one thing. Do you compare dates? So if you've got somebody's CV and you've got their LinkedIn profile, do you compare?
Yeah, we will look at those. Yeah. I mean, there's some leeway, isn't there? You've got to have a tolerance, plus or minus, within a couple of months, etc. And I mean, let's be honest, with any people who spend all of their life on LinkedIn are recruiters. So we do that. Other skill sets, other functions, perhaps not as proactive on LinkedIn. But if something changes, make sure you've updated your LinkedIn. If dates change, if titles change, if companies get taken over, if you suddenly become available, a quick go into your profile and update that piece is a great bit of work to be doing. You want to be as consistent with your profile with your CV.
Perfect. So if we take it through the whole of the process, somebody is then coming for an interview with your organisation. So it's direct interview, working with your organisation. I'm going to guess, especially because you're a global organisation, most first interviews on video still?
So we have what we call a pre-screen, which is me and my team. We're doing, I guess, that pre-qualification with a candidate for two reasons. One, it's important for us to get to know the candidate in terms of what they're looking for, so we can make sure we can meet their aspirations. A candidate is half the decision-making process here. They've got to want to come and work with us. So the pre-qualification, the pre-screen is very much getting to know a person's background, their skills, their experience, why they're looking to leave or why they have left, what they're looking for in a new role, and then obviously matching those aspirations, that experience, with the needs we have for a higher hiring position. So we have the pre-screen, then we typically have no more than 2 interviews, occasionally 3, but certainly 2 interviews, and they are typically virtual, because, as you say, we've got hiring managers throughout the world who are hiring in different regions, so it's physically impossible to have people in front of people. We have recently had some interviews taking place in an office for an office-based position, but majority of our interviews are virtual.
Okay. Tips for people who are not used to doing video interviews, if they're working in manufacturing plants or things, doing this, like you say, we spend our life on LinkedIn, we also spend our life doing video meetings, but not a lot of people could be doing this in their everyday life. What would you
Connectivity and audio is normally the biggest issues that people have. So do some kind of pre-run, do some kind of pre-check. Again, we offer to our candidates to have a pre-run with them just to make sure everything works correctly. They're having those conversations. So do a pre-run, do a pre-check. If you're using earpods, make sure they're fully charged. Make sure your internet's not going to go down for any reason during the conversation, as in some work's planned. Other than that, attend it in person. Attend it like this. You do your planning and preparation beforehand. You prepare your questions. You do your background on the person or the people you're meeting, on the company, and then you sit in front of a screen and you talk as you would do as if you're in front of a person.
Perfect. And the follow-up post-interview, we would always recommend reaching back out, even if it's just a thank you for their time. Important to you, not important? To
me, I like to see it. I think it's up to a candidate to make the decision to do that or not. What I personally do look at is what is the content of that thank you. And again, to me, you differentiate yourself through not just thanking somebody for their time, but to summarize the conversation you've had, to summarize what you offer in terms of skills and experience, and to close with your continued interest and desire to be employed in that role in that company. It's easy to write something over one line to say thank you for your time, I'm looking forward to the next steps. What does that show, compared to somebody who really does think about the meeting and talk to what was discussed in that meeting and what they offer in terms of the role to that company.
It's that content, isn't it? It's all what you talked about the whole way through. It's the content of your CV, it's the content in that application, the content on your LinkedIn profile. When you're chasing, it's about purpose and content, isn't it?
Yes, definitely. All about purpose and content, and all about what you offer, what you bring, and why, you should be the person under consideration over and above anybody else.
Yeah. Is there any big no-nos? Is there anything you've seen and you're like,
in 30 years I've seen a lot.
30 years, because there is some war stories that we've both shared over the years, but is there any things that you think, I mean, if it goes wrong, I suppose if the interview process goes wrong and they do have technical problems and the internet goes down, I'm going to guess that you're at that point, it's get back in touch, explain the situation, offer some dates to rearrange. If it does go wrong, these things do happen, don't they?
Yes. I would say big no is don't cancel last minute wherever possible. Now, in the real world, there are life situations, there are work circumstances, etc. But in all honesty, if appointment's been made, you really want to attend that appointment. Cancelling is a big no-no. If you have decided to accept another offer, be honest, be transparent. Thank you for your time, but I need to tell you I've accepted another offer, and that's the company I'm going to be joining. We're all big enough and old enough and broad enough in the shoulders to understand, these things happen. But again, think about relationships further down the line. You never know when you might need to come back to somebody, at that point. So, I would say always be open and transparent in the communication. So attend, even if you have to say, I'm really sorry, something's happened, and, if possible, can we move this meeting to another time? That's better than just an email, that drops out. And that we advise that same to our hiring managers. I'm sure as recruiters, you say the same to your consultants. If an appointment is there, then the appointment needs to be. How to maintain. If something goes wrong, as you say, a reach out, an email, apologies for what's happened, beyond my control, keen to talk to you. Here are some other available times I have to meet with you and your team.
Communication's key.
Got
a couple of questions which I think are really important, and your input would be really good. So, redundancy and previously being self-employed. There's two questions around this. Should they be made visible on your CV and LinkedIn, redundancy and being self-employed? And also, how are they both perceived? So in the context of you're applying for a permanent position.
I can speak personally to those situations because I've been in both. I've been made redundant and I have been self-employed. I don't necessarily think it's something you need to declare in the resume. Typically, you will be asked in most interviews. Certainly, I encourage me and my team to be finding out why people are looking for new opportunities. If you've been made redundant, just be honest about it. I don't think it's any reflection on you as an individual. It's more than often the business circumstances. Self-employment, again, I don't think you need to list that on the resume, but you may well declare that piece during the conversation that you were self-employed. But you talk to the clients you worked with, the work you did, how you managed that, on their, working for those people as a self-employed person. I don't think they necessarily need to be declared on the resume, but I think they're good things to, again, perhaps draw them out in the cover letter or speak to them when you have chance in the interview process.
I think the self-employed piece is when, and please tell me if I'm wrong, if I interpreted this wrong, but when people are going for a permanent role and they've been self-employed or have their own businesses, there's a question there of, well, do they really want a permanent job? So if we take it back into our careers when we've recruited for maybe people in an ops role and they've run their own business, or they've been a design engineer and they've been a self-employed contractor for so long. The question would always get asked of us, wouldn't it? Oh, I'm going to stay.
It's been asked of me as somebody who's had his own business. Why do you want to come work for somebody else?
Exactly. Why do you want to work for somebody else? And I suppose there's two ways, isn't there? There's one way of how you get that across in writing when you've got the CV and the application. When you're in front of somebody, your personality is going to come through, and that's that area, isn't it?
Yes.
My view is it depends on the person and who you're applying for, and if they don't want to take the risk, as harsh as this is, they're not the right person for you. But is that too harsh a response?
Cultures and values have to match from both the employer and the employee. So if you're looking to join a company, you need to make sure that their values, their culture meet yours. And I was directly asked, why do you want to come work for somebody after working for yourself? And I had a number of personal reasons, for that. And again, you have to, or you bring to that conversation the value you can bring and why now this is the right time. Let's be honest with you. Jobs for life are no longer, so yeah, I think as an employer, you can't say how long is this person going to be with us. You don't know. So many things can change, and as a potential employee, obviously you want to bring the reasons what you offer, whether you were self-employed, employed through a third party, whether you're employed under a subsidiary of a holding company. There's lots of things that come into that piece. Again, I think honest, transparent communication and the reasons for those are important to bring to the conversation. And what you learned during that time of being self-employed, how you managed your time, how you manage your projects, how you brought all of that skills into an employed position.
Yeah, I think that's a really, really valid point. Thank you very much. I think we've covered all of my questions. I'm just checking because I got a long list. I have got one more question for you, which always gets asked. How long should your CV be? How many pages?
I'm not a CV writer. Never have been a professional CV writer, and I don't really have any desire to be a professional CV writer. There are people who have that skills out there. I can't answer that question because I don't know, in all honesty. I think it's the content of the CV, how long you've been in the workforce, what you're looking for. I mean, I've had the sublime to the ridiculous. I had a 27-page CV and a 3-page covering letter received once. And I remember the shortest one I had was a Post-it note. So there's those elements to it. I would say be comfortable. 27 pages and a 3-page covering letter was the longest CV ever that I received. Quite a while ago now. I would say be comfortable and confident with the content rather than the length.
Yeah, that's where I always go with it. If you don't pad it out for the sake of it, if you've only got that much experience, it's that. But if you've been in industry for 20 years, your CV is not going to fit onto 2 pages.
And you don't need to go back to, when you first started.
No.
I would say 10, 15 years is probably the span.
Relevant stuff.
Keeping it relevant on those pieces, most definitely.
Yeah.
I like to see profiles, and I think profiles are important as an introduction. I mean, a CV is difficult, isn't it? I mean, was it Leonardo da Vinci, 1482, when the first CV was created, and it's still here today? It's a 2-dimensional representation of you. So I, as I said earlier, keep the content of that the same. Change the covering letter because you've got more understanding and control of what, and then it's in front of a hiring manager that they're reading from and asking questions from. Sorry, I was also meant to ask when working with external recruiters and also internal, it's also good to know what interview process is going to happen. So what types of interviews, is it behavioral? Is it competency? Is it skills? Are there any assessments? Again, having that information is good to be able to prepare yourself ready for the conversations as you move further forward.
Yeah, perfect. Question regarding salary. Obviously, you've talked about the tracking system and when you're obviously very clear on your salaries that you're offering, that's offered with that job. In your experience, when a position hasn't been maybe offered with a salary, or salaries haven't been discussed up front and that clear, when would you expect somebody to be starting to talk about salaries within the process?
Good company with the right culture, the right attitude will be discussing that very early. I think if somebody's avoiding that conversation, I'd have some red flags about that piece. We don't want salary to be the number one consideration or the only consideration, but we all know in current times, cost of living, those things, that it is an important consideration. So certainly I've always had that as a very early conversation piece. Talking to expectations, I think it's unfair to talk to what you earn today or have earned. That shouldn't base a judgment. It should be your expectations as to what you're looking for. I always encourage people when applying, people put negotiable. That doesn't necessarily help us. I'm sure, in your experience, you have some understanding as to your own value and also what, what you're able to live to on that basis. So I would encourage to put a range in there and then have a conversation on that piece. But also, let's not just focus on salary. Get to know about benefits. Get to know about pensions, life assurance. For me, get to know about career opportunities. The career ladder within the company, the career ladder within the function you're joining. Get to know about training, whether that's on the job, whether there's external training supported, if you can get other qualifications. Get a whole feel for the complete package rather than just the salary number.
Yeah.
Even ask, when do salary reviews happen? How do they performance manage, those kind of things. So you're getting a much wider data point than just a number.
Would you say that, in your experience, the larger organisations have this process mapped out a lot cleaner than SMEs would, or does it really? It comes down to culture and value of
culture and company. It comes down to culture and company. But in some larger organisations who perhaps have that, but it becomes quite diluted in how you achieve that. And then I've consulted with smaller SMEs who have perhaps not as defined a process, but a much easier way to achieve those things. So again, I think as you're looking at a company, getting that complete picture helps you make that decision.
Yeah.
And
Fabulous.
Don't just think about today. Think about a year, 2 years down the line, and how you're going to get to that next point. How does that happen? How does that look in that company?
Yeah. And we're building, aren't we, on this career piece? Because, like you've said, that we're not in jobs for life. I think the average is now we'll have 12 jobs in our career. So we are going to move on again at some point. This is about learning, building, networking, communicating, and building that career for yourself on an ongoing basis. Can't believe 40 minutes. I mean, you and I can always talk. So
I'd also encourage, don't just, if you're in a position where you're out of work and looking for an opportunity, don't just take the first one that comes along for the sake of taking the first one that comes along. Have your ideals, have your criteria, have your wants list listed down, and look to achieve as many of those as you possibly can. If you're not able to, then you're not going to be there for a long time. And we're all allowed, 1 or 2 short spells, but when it becomes too many, more questions become asked. So, in making a decision, make sure you have that criteria you can measure against and say, yes, this is the right offer, the right company for me because it ticks these boxes.
Fabulous. So to conclude, top tips. What you can go 3 things or things that are front of mind that you think if people are going out to the market, wanting to engage with talent acquisition professionals within organisations directly, what would be your top tips?
So I think we said that community, that open, honest, transparent communication and consistent communication is a key piece. personally, I would keep the CV the same and change the covering letter, to meet the application. And then make sure, outside of applying, make sure you have the visibility with those endorsed skills and up-to-date profile, on LinkedIn.
That endorsement on those skills, out of everything we've talked about today, that's the thing for me that I think, we really need to, that needs to be showcased, and that's an easy thing for people to add onto their LinkedIn profile.
Yeah.
Sorry, also on CVs, do you obviously put all contact details on there, and we've both had people that have not put their contact details on there.
Certainly an email address and a telephone number. Are important. I don't think a physical address is as important these days.
Okay.
Than perhaps a general location. But yeah, certainly a name and an email address and a telephone number. And just check the email address you're putting on your CV, how people are going to be reaching back to you. Perhaps don't want that email address from 10, 15 years ago. You might want something that's probably a little bit more, up to date, etc.
And LinkedIn profile, put the LinkedIn profile on a CV?
Yes. Yes, certainly when submitting them, put your LinkedIn profile, on there. I think that's always a good thing to do, most definitely.
Brilliant. Well, thank you very much. I think that's really helpful. Hopefully, our audience have thought that's insightful. And thank you so much for your time. And good luck with all of your international recruitment globally, Australia. I don't know what time zone you're probably on at the moment, but
US colleagues are just coming online now, so I've got the East Coast coming online now, and Australia is hopefully all firmly tucked up in
going to bed. I'm not sure when you actually sleep, to be fair, Martin. Thank you very much for your time.
No problem. And if anybody wants any further help, they can reach out to me via you, or I'm on LinkedIn. Feel free to connect. I'll do my best to help anybody I can. In these times.
That's brilliant. Thank you very much.
No problem.
Take care.
Thanks, Ruth.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.